right, guys, welcome to the Banjo Pod, and we are going to start something new. We're going to start a series called the Lead Like series. Now, why the Lead Like series, and why might you find this helpful? Well, I think it's the number one skill that businesses, environments, the world requires at the moment. And we have the great opportunity to learn from people around us, from great personalities, celebrities, sports people, whatever it is. We have the great opportunity through the World Wide Web, through the internet, to learn from how other leaders operate. Now, the trick through this series isn't to take every good trait that you like, but it's to see what resonates with you, see what captures you, see what type of leader that you might want to be through some of these traits and embed those into your leadership style. Now, in today's series, I want to talk about a particular leader that I've been observing for a while in the sporting world, and that's Dana White. Now, Dana White, the CEO, the big mogul that runs the UFC. He's all over the news. He's been all over the news in the media for the last 10, 15 years. He's taken this little mixed martial arts organization from a $2 million investment to something that's worth billions of dollars right now. And that hasn't come through luck. That hasn't come through, the emergence of this mixed martial arts sport. But he's taken his leadership style, applied it to this particular brand, to this particular sport, and has been able to elevate this organization to where it is now. And I want to talk about a couple of key traits in his leadership style that has made him so effective. The number one trait that he's got that I have observed is that he's really good at building good teams. And he does this by really understanding, firstly, what needs to be done. So from the early days of running the UFC, he got his hands dirty. He really understood what needed to be done by immersing himself into the work. And as that business grew, as that organization grew, he knew the type of people he'd need in certain positions, in certain teams, to elevate that to the next level. And it's also being self-aware as well. So being really good at building teams takes someone that's really self-aware about their strengths and their weaknesses, which brings me to my next point around being self-aware is embedding himself in his work and being super passionate about his work. He knew that he is super emotional and he really rides the highs and he rides the lows. And so while building good teams, he needed a good business partner and good leaders around him to kind of help rein him in. And those are the business partners that he works with. They're really level-headed, really stable, whereas he's the one that, really rides the highs and really suffers during the lows. So having leaders, having business partners to level him out has really helped him kind of keep and stay focused in where he needs to take the organization to. Number two, he knows he's the vision. Sometimes in leaders, we tend to think that, yes, I'm a leader, so I'll give everyone else a voice. I'll give everyone else the opportunity to create the vision. Dana White is self-aware by knowing that he brings the vision, he brings the passion, and so he knows that he needs to direct that vision into the organization. And obviously you can listen to people around you, but he knows that he is the vision. So he gets the vision. He thinks about where he wants the business to go or where he wants a particular event to go or even a piece of media to go, and he gets the team to execute it. There's a particular story that he mentions in some of the podcasts where there's a particular promo that his creative team were putting together, and it had a lot of conflict. It had a lot of basically things that the old school media wouldn't like. And so these creatives basically pushed back on Dana White saying, hey, I don't think this is right. I don't think you should put this in your promo because it, encourages and highlights things in the sport that we don't need to. It highlights people looking like ruffians. Dana White's like, no, I don't care. This is who we are. We are, these fighters are ruffians, and this is who the sport is made around, and we want to be able to highlight those personalities. Anyway, he puts the vision down, and then he goes and sits down during the main event and sits down with his business partner. And as the promo is about to come on, he tells his business partner, mate, you're going to love this promo that's about to come on. They play the promo, and he realizes that the creatives cut that bit out that he wanted. He walks straight to that studio, kicks the door down, and basically tells them, if you guys ever undermine me and my vision again, I'm going to sack every single one of you. And he says he ended up basically getting rid of them anyway. But that just goes to show he's passionate about his vision. You don't grow a business and an organization the way he did without being dead certain and dead focused on your vision. So he's got the vision, he gets the team to execute it. Passion and consistency is obviously in there as well. As you can see, he's really passionate about this brand, passionate about the sport. He seems like just a businessman, but he was actually so immersed in the MMA sport before he actually acquired it. So he understood that deeply, understood the fighters, he knew the fighters. And so you need to be able to intertwine your leadership, your passion in a particular space, and also be consistent. He turns up every day. Another trait that I like about him is that he is all in. He's all in his drive, in everything that he does towards his gig at the UFC. It even goes to the extent of there's two particular examples that come to mind. So one is when one of his kids was about to be born. He was in a appointment a couple of weeks out from the birth, and they said, "Oh, your kid's going to be born on this date." And he was like, "That's not going to fly. I've got a main event on that night. I can't have that." And so basically, his partner had a C-section a couple of days earlier. Sorry, just so he could make that main event because it was such a big main event for that organization. Now, it's obviously a very extreme example, and Dana White, like some of the other leaders, like Steve Jobs, can be very extreme, but you often need that extremity to take an organization to the heights it has gotten to. Another great trait I really like about him is that he understands the impact that he can make as a leader, but also as a director of this business. And what I mean by that is it's not just the impact through entertainment, the impact he has on human lives. And that's through the people that work for him, through the people that impact through their media outlet. And he's really focused on changing people's lives. And he mentions that a lot in his podcast, how he's proud about how he's changed so many people's lives. He gets that impact. He gets the fact that the impact he has on people's lives is such a big driver for him. And so he continues to keep that as a focus in how he runs his business, which comes and brings me to my last point, and probably my favorite part about his leadership style is his loyalty. His loyalty to people, his loyalty to individuals that have helped him build the business up, his loyalty to friends in the business that he really trusts. There's a couple of great examples here that I'd love to bring up. So the first one is his association with Joe Rogan. And so there was this particular moment where Joe Rogan, through his podcast, was getting cancelled out in the world. And he was basically getting calls from media outlets, getting calls from sponsors saying, "Hey, you got to sack Joe in order for us to continue sponsoring you, or in order for us to keep supporting you." And he basically said, "Look, if you want to sack Joe, I'm offering my resignation. I will put my life, my career, my whole position in this business on the line for this bloke who has built this business up from the ground for me." And why he did that was he recognizes the loyalty that Joe showed to him during the early days of building the business up. Joe basically commentated out of passion for the sport, unpaid for the first couple of features of the UFC. And as they started to get big and as they started to roll in sponsor money, that's when Joe started obviously monetizing from his work there. But the passion is what he brought to the business, which is what Dana loved. And so that's something he really wanted to reward, and loyalty was big for him. And so he didn't want to see Joe essentially ostracized just for what he did through his media outlets, and he put his career on the line for him. The other great example, which I love, and this is what I mean by Dana going all in, but also showing that loyalty to his people, is during the time of COVID, during the time of the pandemic, a lot of businesses were laying individuals off. Dana talks about this quite a bit, particularly in the podcast post-COVID. And he talks about leaders and leaders of businesses that basically shunned people and laid off people because of business decisions. He basically said they got to a point where they had to assess what they could do. And one of the easiest options was to actually lay off people. But his biggest point was, look, if you're with me, you're with me. His greatest quote through this whole example is, "This mother effer will burn before I do this to my people." And so what did he do? He didn't think, "Oh, how can I, cost cut my way out of this?" He went through every single possibility to try and find a way on how he can continue his business during that period. And if you can remember, the UFC were one of the only sports during that pandemic that operated out of the Middle East, because he was trying to find every single way of how they could continue running as an organization, how they could continue running their entertainment business in whatever way, shape, or form, either in the United States of America, if required, outside of it. And he went through that by basically his passion, his consistency, his drive, and his focus on loyalty to his people. He didn't want to let his people down. And so he went through every avenue to try and find a way of continuing his business. And doing that made him one of the leaders during the pandemic that other sports organizations looked up to, because they were like, well, he's basically done this. Why can't we do it as well? And that spurred a whole movement of other sporting organizations going through and finding ways to just make it work so they can retain their people, keep their product, and still keep people entertained during that time. So that's it. I mean, Dana White is one of the great leaders in the sporting world. I think he's actually one of the greater sporting leaders, sporting organization leaders at the moment. I think I've got him, Peter V'landys in the Australian setup, and a couple of others. But they're really good leaders that get stuff done, loyal to their people, and obviously have the charisma as well, so they can articulate how they think, why they do things as well. If you really like this lead like series and want to hear about other leaders, let me know. I'm really passionate about leadership. I love learning new things from emerging leaders, but also leaders that have been there, done that. And I'd love to share some insights as well. So if you like this video, comment on this video and subscribe. Would love to show you more and love to continue this lead like series. Thanks for watching the Banjo Pod.